Fox. I'm senior reporter with PhocusWire. Just like to thank Jill for that great panel on loyalty and vacation rental, and welcome Mark Ross-Smith, and he is CEO of Loyal Data Co. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Hi, Linda. Great to be here.
So you do this great kind of roundup of loyalty in airline predictions every year. And I just wanted to start with the idea of, one of them was that a loyalty program would actually start an airline, which is a pretty big kind of prediction. So just take us through that, if you would.
Sure. So you're right. I do these predictions every year purely for airline loyalty. And I must say, the last couple of years, I've been mostly spot on with my predictions. And last year was very difficult to predict, but I still got a few right. So predicting for 2021, you're right. I think there's a big opportunity for a loyalty program to acquire or start an airline. So we've got all these retail and non-sort of airline loyalty programs in the world. There's a lot of them, very large program, big member bases. And the value of those programs is intrinsically tied to the key tenant. So like the retailer or, whoever. If we look at airline loyalty programs, the multiples that they trade at in the open market are sort of 30 to 40 times profit to earnings ratio. Sure. And so if one of these sort of retail programs was to start out, even just a small airline, just something small, because once you get into the airline game, it changes the economics of the loyalty program. And suddenly you could sort of create value out of thin air almost just by starting an airline or really doing a big partnership with an airline. So I think for some of these traditional non-travel loyalty programs to really unlock the value of their business, I really think we're going to see something in the next year or so.
Okay, that would be exciting stuff. So similarly, another of your predictions was that loyalty companies are going to start acquiring non-airline businesses. So existing airline loyalty schemes, I'm guessing you meant there. So what are you thinking there?
Exactly. So I guess to understand the logic behind the acquisition or potential acquisitions here is understanding the economics of airline loyalty businesses, right? So like I mentioned, they're valued in the market a lot higher than the airline itself, right? So an airline loyalty business is typically valued somewhere around, it's a marketing business, it's a technology company, right? And on the market, they're around 30 to 40 times profit to earnings ratio, right?
Sure.
Whereas which basically means for every $1 of profit, it's worth 30, 40 bucks in enterprise value, yeah? Mm-hmm. So whereas an airline trades typically somewhere between 4 and 10 times. 10, 11, 12, that's a really well-run airline, like a Singapore Airlines or something like that, which is very difficult to get to. So for an airline loyalty company, if they were to acquire other marketing businesses that could buy miles, buy points, drive memberships into their scheme, into that existing funnel that loyalty programs have set up, and they're quite good at monetizing that through credit cards and other partners. If they can find synergistic businesses that kind of slot in there, it could make sense to acquire them, drive up the enterprise value of the whole group then, and they could realize more value out of that than just doing simple partnerships.
Okay, so interesting you talk about the value of the loyalty programs there, because I'm interested to know if the airlines actually kind of change their view or their they recognize the value properly of their loyalty schemes. What with Delta borrowing off the back of its loyalty scheme in the past year.
Yeah, you're right. So the old logic, many years ago was that loyalty programs would go out there and they'd pre-sell miles and points to banks. And they, I think it was 2003, 2004 American, when Citi did the deals, like $1 billion, and everyone was like, wow, oh my gosh, $1 billion cash up front. And that's kind of the old school way of doing it. And at the time, what happened is that these programs had to give a big discount to the banks to sort of pre-sell so many miles. And that discount could be as high as 30, 50% kind of thing. So these days, the programs got a little bit smarter. They figured out that if they can value the loyalty business independently, they can effectively mortgage the program, issue bonds, go on the debt market and raise capital that way on less punitive terms than through commercial loans and government loans and other financial mechanisms. So it's effectively cheaper for them to do that. And at the same time, it sort of puts a stake in the ground and says, the program's worth this. And off the back of that, what we're seeing is all these amazing financials come out into the market where everyone can go online and read, all these SEC filings and stuff to see how these loyalty businesses work, how they generate their cash, the kind of margins they have, and it's very fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it's created a lot of kind of excitement about the value of those loyalty schemes and how they evolve going forward. Hence why we're sitting here, I guess. So one of the previous sessions, we spoke to AirAsia, more specifically the big loyalty program, and they're kind of the ones that are holding themselves up in this idea of lifestyle programs going forward. So just talk us through how you see that evolving.
From my perspective, there's a bit of a, so I've been in the airline, outside of an airline. I did different lenses on this, and I think there's a fine line between a lifestyle program and what I call a sexy airline brand. And coalition loyalty programs typically don't work out too well in the long term. You know, it's a very transactional relationship between the host, the key sort of loyalty program, and the customer. You know, you spend this, you get 1 point. It's very transactional in nature. Whereas typically a travel, airline, hotel loyalty program, there's a strong emotional element. And that a strong emotional element is actually what drives a lot of the business. That's what drives the dream. You know, so like folks dream of the first class flight to Japan to see the snow-capped mountains, or staying in the underwater villa in the Maldives. You know, it's something that it's like in the back of your mind, like I'll get there one day. What happens is very few people ever do that or redeem their points for that, but the dream is there. And that's the magic. That's the magic that airline loyalty programs have, is this dream. It's the emotional element. And the more you go, the more programs go in the lifestyle section, the more transactional it becomes. So I think there's a balance there that you can sort of run them both at the same time. But you know, going full, you know, going all in on lifestyle would be something very new for the world. So,
okay. So just looking at that lifestyle element and that balance, I mean, we've seen airlines. I think SAS talked about, you know, having your groceries delivered. I think others have talked about, you know, maybe dog sitting while you're away. What sort of partnerships do you think we might see over the next kind of few months and extending perhaps into 2022?
You're right, Linda. We've seen a lot of really cool things from airlines over the last year. You know, in Asia, we've seen Thai Airways start being a street food vendor and selling food on the street. You know, Singapore Airlines running, you know, teaching people how to be a cabin crew for a day. All these sort of like short burst things. Specifically from a loyalty perspective, what drives most loyalty behavior and programs is emotional, and any partnership that can be emotionally linked in some way. So for example, I always talk about my favorite all-time partnership that I've seen is the really old SPG moments. It doesn't exist anymore, but you know, it had these really special moments, money can't buy type experiences. You know, you go play golf with, you know, all these famous people, have lunch with, you know, just stuff you could never buy. You can never get access to yourself.
Hasn't Emirates started, well, it launched some sort of VIP experiences thing just in the last kind of few months?
Yeah, this stuff is really exciting because it's that how do I say, it's something you don't just aspire
it's unattainable.
To it. It's something, yeah, exactly. And I think the more of this that happens in programs, I think every single loyalty program should have some type of element like this. You know, Delta and SkyMiles through their partnership with Wheels Up are talking about how you could, you know, use your miles to redeem for private jets now. And so for most people, it's something you're probably never going to fly a private jet, but if there's a way to use your miles that there was value in there, it makes it very attractive. And what that does for the currency on the back end, it makes the currency more desirable to earn, which means you're going to get the credit card, you're going to start flying, you're going to go to the right car rental company, you're going to have the right behavior in the program, which obviously makes the program more profitable. What's really driving it is that real hardcore, strong emotional moment that you could redeem for one day.
Okay, so you know, we see from a sort of technology and distribution point of view that actually, you know, airlines, it's hard for them to create these kind of extra selling points. So is that hard, equally as hard for them in loyalty, or is that why they spun them off in the first place? Or, you know, how hard is it to set themselves up technologically for these things?
For these sort of aspirational moments,
or
like
just
that,
these extras in general from that they talk about, you know, building into loyalty, but you know, that I just wondered how hard it is to actually do from a technological standpoint.
Super easy, actually. So it's effectively a marketing company, right? So if we kind of remove ourselves from the airline ecosystem with GDSs and all these crazy processes, and if we get out of that and into sort of Silicon Valley world, it's very easy. You know, very fast, very agile, very easy just to create new products. Things like subscription products, very easy to sort of create like this. They don't take months. There's no 12-month roadmap and we need a team of 50 people to do it. That just doesn't exist anymore because it's very easy to create these new digital products for loyalty programs.
Okay, good. So the airlines went from kind of loyalty points for miles flown to loyalty points for fare price. How successful would you say that's actually been?
I think it depends on the airline and the region. So in the USA, I think it's made sense historically, just because the market's very mature. You know, look at flying. You know, before the last year, they're flying on. You know, the yield was up there, and it made sense to really link the miles earned or the status to how much you are spending. Obviously, a bit different these days, especially North America right now, where fares are really cheap. You can fly cross country on a premium carrier for sort of $50, and you know that's a lot of flights to sort of hit your top status if it was based on spend to get there. So effectively the loyalty you have or the frequency of the airline doesn't really match what you need to spend to get to that top tier anymore. So there's probably a bit of readjusting that needs to happen there. If we look sort of, you know, in my market in Asia here, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to go down the road just because there's so much short haul and most travelers tend to sort of go on economy. There's also a lot of low cost carriers here where the focus is really on ancillary, not so much on the ticket price as such. So I think we'll see a bit of a recalibration of how the status and miles earning is linked to how much you're spending in different markets. I think we'll see that sort of play out over the next year or so as airlines really take a second look at it and go, what's best for our business moving forward? Yeah,
I mean, they're going to have to see what the demand is, whether it's leisure, whether it's business, what routes are successful. You know, it makes sense. So, you know, if you sort of forget about the airlines that you've worked with or consulted for, but, you know, is there anybody that you think is actually doing loyalty really well? And obviously personalization as a part of that.
I'm going to float an idea out here. I think there's a simple explanation for this. And in my experience, I've spoken to a lot of program owners through the years, having run a program myself as well. And from my perspective now, the programs that are doing the best, the programs that have the most interesting offers, the sort of new stuff that's coming out of the market, there's a common theme, and that's that there's people running these programs that in their life have been real frequent flyers themselves. So they've actually had the experience. They've gone those hard yards. You know, they've spent 3 hours at the gate waiting because there's a technical problem, and then they're in the last seat of the back row of the plane, and there's babies next to them. They've gone through all that pain of paying for their own tickets. They're not just airline for life employees. You know, they're on, you know, ID tickets. They're flying pretty cheaply. There's a bit of a disconnect there between the real product, the price, and what you're getting. Yeah, and I think the theme I've seen is there's just more interesting stuff coming out of these airlines. Maybe there's no correlation, but maybe there is between interesting things coming out and the people sort of at the top of these programs have actually really earned status in their life through, you know, their X jobs or other sort of means. And so I think there's just a more of alignment with an understanding of what the customer goes through, the real pain points, what people would pay for, what they wouldn't pay for, and also how to fix the small things that exist in the sort of airline experience.
Do you think it changes, you know, it requires a sort of shift in mindset for them to really kind of tackle the personalization element?
I think so to a degree. I think from a personalization in terms of we'll call it digital marketing perspective, right? So most airlines have what's called like the next best offer. So you're engaging with the product or loyalty program in a certain way. You're buying a certain type of seat, or you've got the credit card, and like, what's the next best thing that Linda is probably going to pay for? Yeah, and it might be a car rental offer, right? Most airlines have sort of been doing that for a while, and I think it's fair to say that's about the extent of digital marketing personalization. And then we talk about personalization in terms of loyalty on an aircraft. That's, you get comfortable in your seat and the cabin manager comes down. Linda's, great to have you back again. Would you like a champagne from first class, even though you're in economy class today? There's that kind of stuff that it's sort of the softer approach to personalization and understanding people's preferences, where they're going, what part of that journey they're in. If they've got a long haul flight ahead of them, what are they likely to care about now versus in 12 hours from now? So I think there's varying degrees of where airlines are up to in that journey. And I really hope airlines are taking the time to sort of reassess this and see where the opportunities are for them to really exploit in the future.
Do you think we could ever have a sort of super loyalty company where you took the power of a big hotel brand and the power of perhaps an existing loyalty scheme or perhaps an airline scheme, and they merged and created a sort of super loyalty scheme?
It'd be pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Years ago, there was SkyTeam and Hertz. I think it was Hertz. Hertz was like the first non-airline member of SkyTeam, and there was a big hoo-ha. I think it was a few years ago. There was a big song and dance about it, and how did you rent a car and have a flight number? Something like that. It was something very.
What, they joined up the PNR?
That'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it? I remember something like that. It would be very interesting to see maybe it needs to be done at an alliance level, just because it's a group of airlines, and
it's maybe over the top of it. Yeah,
exactly. It's maybe easier to sort of create something like that. I would like to see a big relationship like that between a group of hotels, not just one hotel chain. Like if there was an alliance for hotels, and then alliance if they got together and got married.
Well, they've tried that too. That wasn't that successful either. But anyway, that's a subject for another day, perhaps. So now one element of sort of that kind of sits with loyalty is the subscription model. And we've got airlines like Polaris and Lufthansa that have explored it. And is that, would that work on a big carrier? Is that something that you think might be extended?
So subscriptions are about two things. They're about sort of sustainability of revenue. So it's recurring revenue on again. There's what's called a lock-in effect. So the idea is you paid something, so the chances of you engaging or buying a future service with that business are much higher. So there's that element, and it makes sense for some airlines. In loyalty, you've got TAP Air Portugal. They run subscription for their miles purchasing service, and you can get status off the back of that, as elite status off the back of that as well. Very successful, very profitable for them in doing that. I think it depends on the airline. It depends on the business. If we look at outside airline world, a subscription business can work really well, like a Netflix type deal or an Amazon. It can also not work so well, where because a subscription, people can generally cancel at any time. So you take the risk of people paying 2 months and then canceling versus, if you were to say, this is a year upfront cost for something. So you sort of get all the revenue in now, and they effectively can't cancel it.
They don't use it exactly. Yeah, feels a bit like the gym.
We've all been there. We've all gone through that.
Okay, look, just as we finish up here, project forward kind of 5 years. What does being an airline loyalty member look like?
I hope there's a human element brought back to it. I think there's been a big focus on the transaction element. Pay this, get the credit card, get this, just sell. And traditionally, airline flying, travel is all about adventure, freedom, joy, all these great sort of feelings we get when we do it. There's a romance to it. And I really hope loyalty can bring some of that back to the travel experience, because that's why we all travel. You know, there's something magical about this. There's some sparkle there. And I think if we can bring more sort of happiness and joy to the world through people's travel experiences, what more could you ask for?
Yeah, it's true. When we get back to the skies. All right, Mark Ross-Smith, CEO, Loyalty Data Company. Thank you so much for joining us. And stay tuned, everyone. My colleague Mitra Sorrells is next with Leonard de Jong from SysNM. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.